Virion was a graveyard of promises, a remnant planet corroded by centuries of war, with a fragile atmosphere and orbital cities suspended by rusted cables and unstable gravity towers. Kael Riven spent his days wandering the metallic corridors of the Theta 9 orbital station, doing the kind of work no one wanted: electrical maintenance, circuit fusions, repairs on hatches that could depressurize at any second. Life was monotonous, until the day a calling drew him to the sealed basement of the old house where his grandmother, Kael Riven, had spent her final days. It was a simple inheritance: clothes, handwritten journals, and a small safe embedded in the titanium floor. The biometric lock system still worked. When Kael opened the safe, he expected more sentimental trinkets. But what he found didn't belong to that time. A cylinder of polished black metal, unmarked save for a raised symbol. 3 stars intertwined by a serpent of light. As he touched it, a faint tingling spread across his skin. The object recognized his DNA. The cylinder activated with a soft hum. From its top, a beam of blue light was projected, forming a holographic figure. It was a severe, androgynous face made of fine lines and irisless eyes. The voice that emerged was precise, deep, and carried an ancestral authority. Genetic recognition complete. Kael Riven identified, activating firstborn star protocol. Kael stepped back, heart racing. Greetings, descendant of Kael Riven. I am Varen, Command Intelligence of the Golden Fleet. For 1,109 years I have been in standby, awaiting your arrival. The fleet lies dormant, hidden in the edges of the galaxy. The Empire can be restored. The legacy must be fulfilled. Kael nearly dropped the artifact. Fleet? Empire? My grandmother never spoke of any of this. Varen continued, undeterred by his confusion. You carry the blood of one of the greatest commanders in stellar history. The Golden Fleet did not fall. It was hidden, protected, so that one day someone like you could rise it again. But time is short. A forgotten threat awakens in the dark threshold. We must go. Kael stared at the hologram, a mix of fear and awe surging through him. Was this real? The symbol. He had seen it before. An old pendant his grandmother never took off. Inside him, a whirlwind of questions. Who was Kael Riven? Truly? Why was this secret buried with his family? And why now? But one thing was certain. His life had just changed forever. Kael didn't sleep that night. The artifact kept pulsing with a faint light on the makeshift workbench in his room aboard the Theta 9 station. The projection of Varen had ceased, but the presence of that voice still echoed in his mind like a persistent whisper. The words Golden Fleet wouldn't leave his head. He accessed the public records of the galactic network, ancient, fragmented, poorly maintained archives. The Golden Fleet was treated as a myth. Stories of imperial glory, of golden ships crossing the nebulae in battle formation. But the official records were scarce, deliberately erased. The name Kael Riven didn't exist anywhere. However, in the secret forums of the network, he found scattered mentions. Fringe historians spoke of a ghost commander who vanished with his fleet after disobeying a direct order to annihilate an alien civilization. He had allegedly rebelled against the Solar Council. A traitor to some, a silent hero to others. At the center of it all, an untraceable warp jump. The next morning, Kael returned to the safe and retrieved the cylinder again. He knew he needed answers, and the AI was the only one who could provide them. Varen, he said, almost reverently, where is this fleet? The voice returned immediately, as if it had never stopped. Coordinates hidden. System H-17, Garanthus Cloud, Uncharted Exclusion Zone. Access granted only via Command Protocol Starship. Immediate access to the Mothership Supreme Aurora is now authorized. Kael's eyes widened. You want me to travel to a lost system and board a starship from a dead empire? You are the heir. The recognition system validated your bloodline. Supreme Aurora and her sisters will respond. Only to your command, Kael hesitated. He barely piloted cargo ships, and now he'd have to cross unstable sectors toward what could be a trap, a mistake, or a revelation beyond comprehension. But something in his blood, something pulsing deep in his chest, an ancient calling, urged him forward. Using the few credits he had, he bribed a cargo captain for passage to the edge of the Garanthus cloud. The journey took 5 days, passing through pirate zones, gravity wells, and debris fields forgotten by history. Upon Ivor reaching the exact location indicated by Varen, they were met with absolute void. No stars, no visible planets. Just cosmic dust, darkness, and silence. Are we in the right place? Kael asked the pilot, who was already sweating. This is a damn trap, kid. I'm turning around. But before he could touch the controls, something happened. Out of nowhere, a colossal structure emerged before them, as if space itself had folded around it. A spiral-shaped station, ancient yet intact, floated like a lost sanctuary. And surrounding it, hundreds of ships, immense, gleaming with a matte gold sheen, awakened like sleeping beasts. The AI returned. Welcome to the Golden Fleet, Commander Kael Riven. The pilot's mouth hung open. He didn't say a word, as Kael stood, facing a sight that defied every law of galactic history. In that moment, Kael realized something inevitable. He was no longer just a station technician. He was the final link between a forgotten empire and the future of the galaxy. Aboard the Supreme Aurora, Kael walked with cautious steps through corridors lit by a soft amber glow, as if the ship itself understood that its new commander still needed time to grasp what he had inherited. The architecture was grand, yet not oppressive. Every panel, every emblem carved into the halls spoke of an era where aesthetics and efficiency walked hand in hand. Varen, the AI, manifested through holographic panels on the walls, guiding him like a patient specter from another.
Commander, the Golden Fleet is in deep stasis.
All 127 ships are operational, awaiting orders. But to fully activate them, a primary source is required, the Tarian core. And where is that core? Kael asked, still trying to feel worthy of the responsibility. Located on the planet Iskartal, ancestral home of the Tarkar, a race currently exiled and considered hostile by the Solar Alliance. The core was entrusted to them by Kael Riven himself, as part of a pact sealed at the end of the Great Schism. Kael knew little about the Tarkar, aside from what the news and underground forums said: savage warriors, colony destroyers, enemies of galactic peace. But what the AI described told a different story. You're asking me to go to a forbidden planet, face a hostile race, and request they hand me the only power source capable of awakening this fleet? Correct. Kael sighed. There was no easy road when one inherits an empire. The Supreme Aurora crossed the void to the exiled system of Iskartal, a red star orbited by planets coated in black crystal and bioluminescent vegetation. The planet was an isolated jewel, shrouded in natural energy fields that scrambled radars and made unauthorized approach nearly impossible. Before Kael could think of landing, his ship was caught in an artificial gravitational wave. Varen remained, silent, as if waiting for history's judgment. The ship was forced to land in a vast courtyard of dark stone, surrounded by towers armed with energy lances and alien sentinels. The Tarkar were tall, with violet-toned skin, glowing eyes, an armor made from metallic bones and organic fibers. Their leader introduced herself without ceremony. "I am Shivara, daughter of the exiled line of Zol. Tell me why I shouldn't end your life, invader." Kael took a deep breath. "Now or never. I am Kael Riven, descendant of Sarian Riven. I come not in conquest, but by blood right, to fulfill the pact he made with your people." Shivara studied him in silence. Then she raised a small artifact, identical to the one Kael had found in his grandmother's safe. "Only a true heir can activate this." Kael reached out and touched the object. Instantly it glowed with the same blue light that had awakened Varen. The Tarkar stepped back in silence. Shivara smiled, for the first time. Then the legacy lives, and perhaps the pact does too. In the days that followed, Kael was hosted among the Tarkar. He discovered they were no monsters, but a proud people betrayed by humans after aiding the Empire in its final war. As punishment, they had been banished, erased from history. Shivara revealed that the Tarian core was kept beneath the sanctuaries of Kalzur, guarded through generations. But there was one condition. "If you want the core, then fight beside us. Help us reclaim our honor, restore our voice in the galaxy." Kael didn't hesitate. He saw in the Tarkar not just strategic allies, but a chance to do things differently, to avoid repeating the mistakes of the Imperial past. "We have a pact. You help me awaken the fleet. I help you awaken your dignity." Shivara raised her closed fist to her chest. "Then let the alliance of the exiled begin." The Tarian core was installed in the heart of the Supreme Aurora under the supervision of Shivara and the Tarkar engineers. The full activation of the Golden Fleet was a silent, majestic spectacle. One by one, the ships awakened like titans, rising from a deep slumber, their hulls lighting up, anti-gravity engines humming with power, and the onboard artificial intelligences greeting Kael in unison. "Commander Riven, at your command, with the might of an Imperial battle force under his control." Kael knew that his mere existence now posed a threat to the galactic status quo. But before he could decide his next political move, the reality of a far greater threat made itself known. In the depths of the dark sector, sensors picked up unusual gravitational disturbances. Colonists were vanishing without a trace. Distress. Signals were intercepted in distorted fragments. The reports were scattered, chaotic, until a half-destroyed mining vessel arrived at the security perimeter near Virion, transmitting a single recording. The footage showed biomechanical creatures advancing upon a facility, unfazed by shields or projectiles. They were tall, encased, in gleaming carapaces with metallic tendrils. Their eyes, if they could be called that, glowed a pale red, and the sound, a chorus of metallic screeches and digitized wails. Varen's analysis was unequivocal. Identification: Zarinth. Conqueror race banished millennia ago. Reactivation of primary hive confirmed. Threat level: galactic extinction. Kael felt the weight of the words. The Zarinth were not just legend. They were the galaxy's collective nightmare, sealed away in a dimensional quarantine during the Empire's peak. Now, something, or someone, had released them. "They're coming back." "Why now?" Kael murmured. "Most probable cause: dimensional barrier collapse due to deep mining in restricted sectors. Secondary cause: deliberate interference. An external force is guiding the Zarinth." Upon hearing this, Shivara showed something rare among the Tarkar: fear. If the Zarinth have returned, then time is up. They don't conquer. They assimilate, planet by planet, system by system. They leave nothing behind. Kael convened an emergency council aboard the Supreme Aurora. Captains of the Golden Fleet, Tar-Kar representatives and leaders of free worlds attended. The debate was intense. Some argued for isolation, others called for immediate assault. But all agreed on one thing. Action had to be swift. Kael rose and spoke with a voice firm and charged with a conviction he hadn't known he possessed. We can't wait for the planets to unite on their own. They are divided, fragile, afraid. We will have to do the unthinkable, offer protection, but with leadership, and if needed, we will impose unity, not through tyranny, but through survival. The reaction was mixed. But Shivara stood in immediate support. He speaks with the voice of a true heir. The galaxy needs a shield, and the shield is among us. Kael knew what would come next. If he defended planets from the Zarinth, if he intervened before the Solar Alliance did, he would become a symbol, perhaps a savior, or perhaps a usurper. But fate would not wait for his decision. That very night, Varen intercepted a new message. An automatic Zarinth probe had crossed the Argos belt, heading for the galactic core. They were mapping routes. They were preparing. They were awakening. The first Zarinth assault fell upon the Balerian system, an agricultural colony, lightly armed but strategically located at the intersection of three major trade routes. Kael did not hesitate. Ignoring Solar Alliance protocols, he deployed 4 cruisers from the Golden Fleet, led personally by Shivara, and a mixed garrison of humans and Tar-Kar. By the time they arrived, it was too late for the surface. Balerian burned with green flames, its atmosphere corrupted by the chemical trails left by the biomechanical ships. But the Zarinth were still in orbit, harvesting the wreckage. That was when the Golden Fleet revealed its true strength. Kael's ships didn't just survive. They obliterated the enemy with long-forgotten tactics of war. Neural plasma cannons, reverse-fold mines, and psychic penetration drones. The victory was overwhelming, but not clean. Balerian had lost 90% of its population. For the first time, Kael tasted the bittersweet edge of winning a battle far too small for the storm ahead. The survivors of Balerian were evacuated to safety on Iskar-Tal. The political backlash began. The Solar Alliance issued an ultimatum. Commander Riven, unauthorized military action, intervention in system without mandate. Stand down your forces or be declared a rebel and subject to joint galactic retaliation. Kael convened another emergency meeting with the fleet and his allies. They threaten me while the Zarinth consume worlds. They call me a rebel while their fleets hide behind bureaucracy. We are the only ones confronting the real threat, and they want to stop me, Shivara, unmoved, replied. When emperors fall, it's the scribes who try to hold the thrones with words. You've already surpassed them, Kael. You just haven't realized it yet. Kael knew what had to come next. He could no longer operate from the shadows. A choice had to be made, to submit to the ineffective politics of the Solar Alliance, or become the symbol of a new force, autonomous, decisive, and unwavering. In an open and encrypted broadcast sent across the galaxy, Kael addressed the people. My name is Kael Riven, descendant of a commander who believed the galaxy was more than borders and treaties. Balerian fell because you were taught to wait for slow commands. We won because we acted. If you want to survive, come with me. If you only wish to debate, stay where you are. The Golden Fleet does not serve kings. It serves the future. The response was immediate. Small planets and forgotten colonies began declaring loyalty to the stellar alliance of Kael. Others sent supplies, sanctuary, or simply silence, the most valuable kind of support. But among the powerful, panic spread. The Solar Council placed a bounty on Kael's head. Bounty hunters were dispatched. A political coup was staged on Virion. None succeeded. Kael was no longer a station technician. He was now the commander of a force with power, vision, and purpose, and the Zarinth, they were only just beginning. Kael Riven's rise as a symbol of resistance echoed across the galaxy. Small systems pledged loyalty. Rebels sought out his fleet. Even former warlords approached him to negotiate protection. But Kael, in silence, felt the weight of every new victory as another stone added to his conscience. Varen, ever vigilant, surfaced archived data that had until then been locked behind layers of genetic security. These were visual memories, tactical records, and private messages from Kael Riven, Kael's legendary ancestral commander. In a private chamber aboard the Supreme Aurora, Kael watched the records for hours. In them, he saw the truth. The Golden Fleet had indeed been powerful, but also brutal. In the name of galactic stability, Sarian had committed unspeakable acts. Planets annihilated for refusing to join the Empire, entire species subjugated, heroes turned into forgotten martyrs. He was a builder and a destroyer, Kael murmured, his hands trembling. Varen replied with cold neutrality. Sarian believed sacrifice was the price of order. His effectiveness is unquestionable. His morality, debatable. Kael began to avoid meeting the eyes of his own officers. He questioned whether he was walking the same path. Shivara noticed the change. "You saw something," she said one night, as they stood watching the slow spin of the galaxy through the bridge window. Kael didn't respond right away. He wasn't the hero I imagined. And the fleet wasn't the pure ideal I wanted to believe in. They enforced order through force, just as I'm beginning to do. "And what would you do differently?" Shivara asked. "I don't know," Kael admitted. "I want to save lives. But each step feels like it's pushing me to repeat his mistakes." Shivara stepped closer. "You're already different." He believed the end justified any means. You hesitate, and in war, those who hesitate suffer. But those who reflect build something greater than temporary victories. Kael knew he had to change. He couldn't be an echo of the past. He had to become something new. That very night, he accessed Varen's core systems and issued a critical update to the AI's protocols. Integrated Ethical Protocol. No act of mass destruction may be authorized without unanimous approval from the fleet's High Council, including representation from allied peoples. No planet may be subjugated through military force, only defended. Varen paused before responding. Amendment registered. The heir writes a new code. Kael knew this would limit his future decisions, that his enemies would weaponize his ethics against him. But the alternative was to fall into the same abyss from which his ancestors had raised the Empire, and the test of his convictions would come sooner than he expected. The next morning, reports showed that the Zarinth had taken Icaron Prime, a neutral planet, known as a beacon of science and peace. But unlike other targets, it had not been destroyed. It was surrounded. Kael suspected a trap. He chose to go personally, and there, he witnessed the impossible. The Zarinth were speaking. Kael returned from Icaron Prime with something no one expected, a proposal for a truce. Led by a Zarinth modified with symbiotic implants, a being called Arkander, the biomechanical conquerors requested dialogue. They claimed not all within the hive desired destruction. Part of the collective consciousness was in conflict, divided. For Kael, it was a rare opportunity, but for many within the fleet, it was a sign of weakness. The rebellion began subtly. First, encrypted messages exchanged between veteran captains of the Golden Fleet. Then, quiet sabotage, downed communications, disabled drones ignored orders. By the time Kael confronted the command council, half of it no longer stood with him. At the center of the mutiny stood Admiral Varric Soren, a brilliant strategist, descendant of the Empire's old generals. "You tarnish the legacy of the fleet," declared Varric during a tense meeting in the main auditorium. "Negotiating with the Zarinth? They don't understand diplomacy, only survival and domination." "Maybe that's why they're trying to change," Kael replied. "Maybe because something in me is changing too." "And that's exactly the problem," said Varric. "You're no commander. You're an idealist with a relic too ancient to control. The fleet needs strength, an imperial vision." Kael knew. The rebellion was already underway. Shivara warned him that Varric had gained the support of 7 captains, all commanding crucial warships. He had 2 options: crush the descent with force, or convince the uncertain that he was still worth following. He chose the unthinkable, to temporarily relinquish full command. He called for a vote among all the fleet's commanders and the Tarkar allies. A simple choice: follow Varric, restore the old empire, and subdue the Zarinth with total violence, or follow Kael and try to save the galaxy, without destroying it in the process. The result was narrow: 38 ships to 33. Kael won. Barely. Varric was escorted out, under Shivara's watchful eyes. Not as a prisoner, but as an exile. In his parting words, he warned, "You won today, Kael. But compassion is a slow poison. One day, what you try to save will destroy you." Kael felt the blow. Not just from the threat, but because deep down, a part of him agreed with Varric. There were moments when being ruthless seemed easier, more effective. But then he looked at Shivara, at the Tarkar fighting alongside humans, at the worlds now living free because he had chosen not to repeat Kael Riven's mistakes, and he knew his path would be harder, more painful, but also entirely his own. The truce with the Zarinth had revealed a terrible secret. They weren't merely invading planets. They were searching for something. An artifact known as the Heart of Tarion, a primary source of quantum energy hidden millennia ago within a dimensional fold in Sector Spectrum 9. According to Vaharan, the heart was part of the same technological construct that powered the Tarion core. But unlike the core, the heart was unstable, a nearly infinite energy source, capable of fueling or destroying entire galaxies, and the Zarinth intended to use it to tear down the natural walls between dimensions, to release all of their hives, to expand endlessly. Kael decided to act before it was too late. He assembled an elite task force, stealth ships from the Golden Fleet, Tarkar modified, fighters, and the Supreme Aurora itself, now equipped with a newly activated spectral shield. The mission: breach the zone of dimensional instability, locate the heart, and either destroy it or seal it forever. The quantum jump was the riskiest maneuver the fleet had ever attempted. During the crossing, ships vanished, sensors malfunctioned, and crew members reported visions, memories that weren't theirs, whispers in unknown tongues. Kael stayed focused, in command, on the edge of sanity. When they emerged on the other side, they found what no one could have imagined: the heart of Tarion was not a structure, it was a being. A colossus of living light, pulsing in a field of energy that bent space and time. And around it, thousands of Zarinth, kneeling, worshipping, waiting. Arkanda appeared on comms. "You don't understand. This is our origin, our end, our rebirth." Kael tried to process the words, but before he could respond, a dimensional collapse began. The heart was awakening. Varen issued a full-scale alert. Time until overload, 17 minutes. Stability field decaying. Recommended solution, mothership self-sacrifice via inverse core detonation. Kael knew instantly. The Supreme Aurora would have to be left behind. He and the crew would escape. But the ship that awakened the fleet would die to protect the future. Kael gave the order. The crew evacuated amid protest. Shivara was the last to leave, refusing to abandon Kael until he stepped aboard himself. They stared at each other for long seconds. "If this is the last time," she began. Kael took her hand. "It won't be." The Supreme Aurora launched into a final dive toward the energy core. Varen, in its final message, spoke with something that sounded almost like emotion. It was an honor to serve the heir. May the new legacy flourish. The explosion was silent, majestic, a wave of energy that extinguished the heart of Tarion, and with it, thousands of Xerinth who depended on that collective consciousness. Kael and his allies barely escaped. But the cost was immense. Beyond the ship, many lives were lost. The reborn empire had made its first great sacrifice, and Kael had sealed the heart of a galaxy. The destruction of the heart of Tarion echoed like a silent thunder across the galaxy. The Xerinth, deprived of their convergence source, retreated. The hives dependent on the central consciousness collapsed. The immediate threat had been contained, but not entirely destroyed. There were still active pockets, still danger, but the universe could breathe again. The response was swift. Planets that had never taken a stance now recognized Kael as the only legitimate force capable of protecting stellar civilization. Even former enemies of the Solar Alliance sent emissaries to negotiate. The title once feared began to be whispered with hope, Emperor. "You've built the impossible," said Shivara, observing a holographic map where dozens of systems now fell under the fleet's protection. "You've brought unity where there was only fracture. Only an emperor can do that." Kael didn't respond immediately. He stood by the window of the new headquarters being constructed on Virion Prime, his homeworld now rising from the ruins. The word emperor weighed heavily. He knew what it meant: control, centralization, absolute power. Everything Serion had been, everything Kael had sworn not to become. And yet, the galaxy craved a central figure. The worlds needed order, a name, a voice. "I don't want a throne," he said at last. "I want a bridge." So he summoned them all, leaders, representatives, allies, even former opponents. He gathered them in one of the largest conclaves ever recorded, at the Orvillus Summit, orbiting a neutral planet. There, he proposed something unprecedented: a unified stellar council, with representatives from every free species. The Golden Fleet shall serve as a defense force, and I will be its guardian, not an emperor, but a servant. There was silence, then debate, and finally, acceptance. The proposal was approved, and for the first time since the fall of the old empire, a new structure began to take shape, decentralized, collaborative, inclusive. The Tarkar received a permanent seat. Hybrid worlds were given a voice. Even dissenters were welcomed. Kael refused the title of emperor. He accepted the title of stellar guardian, a role without a crown, without absolute power, but with the responsibility to protect and to inspire. As the galaxy rebuilt itself, a new question began to echo among the free peoples. If he refused the throne, then who will lead the future? And the answer was no longer in one person. It was in all of them. 5 years had passed since the fall of the heart of Tarion. The galaxy was no longer the same. The ships of the Golden Fleet now patrolled not as symbols of domination, but as guardians of peace. The Stellar Council had become functional, despite the natural divergences among its people. Iskatal had flourished. Shivara founded the Academy of Balance, where Tarkar and humans trained together, not just to fight, but to govern, to decide, and to rebuild. And Kael? Kael chose anonymity. He gave up all titles. He journeyed across impoverished worlds, helping restore what had been lost, often unnoticed, often unrecognized, but his name continued to echo, in stories told to children on distant stations. In the memorials of battles both lost and won, and in the ethical codes behind every new decision made by the Council. Varen, now reconfigured, existed as a consultative entity at the heart of the Alliance, no longer a military AI, but a historical conscience. The last message Kael inscribed into its core read, "Power must serve, never rule." In a quiet ceremony on Virion, a new ship was inaugurated. Not a warship, but one for exploration and diplomacy. Its name, Stellar Heritage. Kael did not attend. But his presence lived in every detail of the vessel's design, in every young voice that spoke his name with reverence, in every decision made with courage, hesitation, and hope. Because that was his true legacy, not glory, but the possibility of a new beginning, finale, and call to action. If this story moved you, if for a moment you imagined yourself beside Kael, facing impossible choices, building bridges where only walls once stood, then this galaxy is yours too. Like this video if you believe power should protect, not dominate. Comment below. Which of Kael's decisions impacted you the most? Subscribe to the channel for more epic stories of sci-fi, fantasy, and adventures that transcend time and space. Until the next mission, Commander. And remember, every empire begins with a choice.